Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. And maybe some of you have some days off here during the Christmas holiday.
Yay!
Who knows? And upcoming is New Year's Day. So maybe you have some time to sit back and read a novel if you'd like the challenge. So in our literature unit today, we're going to be talking about the novel Wuthering Heights, which was published back in the 1800s. I've heard about this book. It has made a mark on Western culture to a certain degree, although I've never read this book myself. I'm pretty much sure you have, right?
Of course. And it's funny because a lot of women look at Wuthering Heights and they think it's a romance. Guys, it's really not. But there is a part of this story that is very romantic, yet sad, unfortunately, between Catherine and Heathcliff. But, you know, that's half of the book. The other half doesn't even really have anything to do with Catherine and Heathcliff. I don't want to give everything away.
So let's get to it. It's a story of passion and cruelty. Let's get going.
It's the dead of winter in 1801. A man named Lockwood has rented Thrushcross Grange, an isolated manor on England's Yorkshire moors. Though he's 4 miles away from his neighbors in Wuthering Heights, Lockwood can sense something off about the property's owner and his landlord Heathcliff. Lockwood asks his housekeeper, Nellie Dean, to tell him Heathcliff's story. Nellie's story begins roughly 3 decades earlier, when Mr. Earnshaw, the owner of Wuthering Heights, brings home an orphan, Heathcliff, to raise as his own. Earnshaw's daughter, Catherine, soon grows to love Heathcliff, who reciprocates her feelings. Her brother, Hindley, however, detests him. To curb Hindley's cruelty toward Heathcliff, Earnshaw sends his son away to college. When Earnshaw dies, Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights and returns with Frances, his wife. Shortly after, Frances dies, giving birth to their son, Hareton. Meanwhile, in Catherine's pursuit of social advancement, she becomes engaged to Edgar Linton, who resides at Thrushcross Grange, despite her desire for Heathcliff. Distraught, Heathcliff leaves Wuthering Heights for 3 years. During this time, Catherine dies shortly after giving birth to a girl who's named after her mother. When Heathcliff returns, he's intent on seeking revenge on those who've wronged him. Hindley, who's now an alcoholic, dies soon after Heathcliff's return. Upon inheriting Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff marries Isabella Linton, Edgar's sister. He treats Isabella so cruelly that she escapes to London, where she gives birth to a son she names Linton. 13 years go by, during which Nellie takes care of the young Catherine. When Isabella dies, Linton moves to Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff, ever resentful, forces Catherine and Linton into marriage. Thus, when Edgar and Linton, who are both sickly, die, Heathcliff becomes the owner of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. He then forces Catherine to act as the housekeeper at Wuthering Heights. Shocked at Nellie's story, Lockwood leaves the manor. When he returns 6 months later, Nellie informs him of Heathcliff's death and young Catherine's engagement to Hareton.
Okay, everybody, let's discuss in detail today's lesson. Again, this is a 3-day lesson. Today we're going to be talking about the plot of our featured novel, Wuthering Heights. It's a story of passion and cruelty. Y'all know what passion is. That means you have a strong feeling for something or someone. And cruelty means you're being mean to someone or something. And usually it means you're doing so on purpose.
Right.
You really want to inflict pain or suffering on that person or on that thing. We talk about cruelty to animals. A lot of animal rights groups are trying to stop cruelty to animals. And of course, we've got cruelty in our society as well. People are mean to each other sometimes for no real reason at all. So that's what this book is about. So if you like being inflicted with pain and suffering by other people, or you like doing it yourself and reading about the suffering and pain of others, then this is the book for you, Wuthering Heights. I'm not an expert on this book. I have not read this book, but I have heard the song by Kate Bush, the famous British singer.
Oh, I don't know
Wuthering Heights. So I got kind of a little bit of the story by listening to that song by Kate Bush. But in any case, let's talk about the novel here, and let's move on now to the first paragraph. It says, "It's the dead of winter in 1801. That's going way back in time at the beginning of the 19th century.
Yeah.
If we talk about the dead of something, that means like right in the middle of something. I can only think of two places in which we use this word this way, the dead of night and the dead of winter. Can you think of any other time?
No, I really can't. Yeah, and it's interesting. I looked up the dead of winter. It doesn't always come up in the dictionary, but it's just as Tom said, we consider it to be like smack dab in the middle. So it's kind of the worst, most horrible time of winter when it's cold and dark and yuck.
And spring is still several months away, and you know you got to wait for a long time.
You're not even close, I know. So we've got a man named Lockwood, and he's rented Thrush Cross Grange. In England or any other place in Europe, really, if you have a big estate or a big manor, a house that's quite expensive, they often give them names. You know, we don't name our homes in America very much, right? But these are nice, big homes with lots of property, and they give them names. So he's rented a place called Thrush Cross Grange. We don't see Grange very often. When I see Grange, I think of an area of land, but it's actually not. I looked it up. It's a country house with farm buildings that are attached to that particular place. So back in England, they had royalty, you know, there were levels of social classes, and if you owned property, you were pretty wealthy. So he's rented Thrush Cross Grange. We can assume that Lockwood isn't poor. It's an isolated manor located in England in an area called Yorkshire Moors. Talked about the moors before we started reading the article. It's just an area where there's a lot of flat land, tall grass. I think of the moors that way. And of course, there are a lot of moors in Scotland. That's why I've always thought in my mind, this book is based there. I haven't read this book since I was probably I think it was in college when I first read it. But if it's isolated, guys, it's really quite alone. It's not near anything else. Can you think of something that's pretty isolated in Taipei?
In Taipei, I can think of maybe Taiwan. It's quite isolated, maybe in Nantou County. If you're in the central mountain range, you might be fairly isolated from the rest of Taiwan. But hey, Taiwan's a small place. It's hard to find some place that's isolated.
Unless you're in the mountains, maybe. Yeah.
Siberia in Russia is quite isolated. You're far away from cities and other people and stuff. You can feel quite lonely there. So this is an isolated manor or estate or grange or whatever you want to call it in the moors of Yorkshire, which is one of the many shires in England, Yorkshire there. I think it's in northern England somewhere. And though he's 4 miles away from his neighbors in Wuthering Heights, Lockwood can sense something off about the property's owner and his landlord, Heathcliff. So yes, even though this other place is 4 miles away. Let's see, what's the other place that's 4 miles away? Wuthering Heights. Okay.
Yeah.
The main person in this story is the guy, what's his name? Lockwood. He starts the story, and he lives at Thrush Cross Range, and then 4 miles away is Wuthering Heights. And even though it's 4 miles away, he senses, wow, there's something off about that place. If it's off, that means it's not normal. It's kind of unusual, kind of odd, kind of strange.
Yeah, sometimes we'll even use off to talk about when like milk goes sour. Ooh, it smells a little off. So something's wrong. You know, you're not quite sure what it is. Somebody can be described as being off. If you have kind of a weird neighbor or you have a coworker who's a little different, yeah, so something's a little off about him or her. So there was something strange. He could feel it, but he didn't know the whole story. So he wants to kind of find out what's going on there. The property's owner and his landlord, Heathcliff. Heathcliff actually owns Thrush Cross Grange. This is a book actually that starts in a current period and then goes back to review things that have already taken place.
Kind of like a flashback,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So, and he actually, we don't talk about it here, but Lockwood finds a diary from Catherine, who's now dead.
Okay.
So he learns a lot that way, too. So what does Lockwood do to get the gossip? Because we all want to have the gossip. He goes to his housekeeper, whose name is Nellie Dean, and he says, hey, tell me about this Heathcliff fellow, my landlord. What's up? You know, I feel like something a little strange about him and his story.
Exactly. That's where you can get the information, where you can get the scuttlebutt from the servants, actually. They're not as dumb as you think they are. They're watching stuff and they're taking notes. So, yes, talk to the housekeeper, the butler, the driver.
They know everything.
The gardeners. They can tell you all sorts of stuff. So he's talking to Nellie, and Nellie's story begins roughly 3 decades earlier. So she does start talking about this flashback. But, hey, we'll talk about this actual story in a couple of seconds here. Let's take a break right now, but stay tuned. We'll be right back.
大家好，欢迎收听 English Digest， 我是哈利。今天我们要阅读的文章是 Unit 15文学单元的第一天课程。今天的课程要介绍一本经典小说 Wuthering Heights， 中文名称叫做啸风山庄。首先我们看到课文标题 Wuthering Heights, A Story of Passion and Cruelty。 名词 passion 是热情、激情的意思。Have a passion for something 就是指对什么有热情。例如 Jessica has attended a lot of art exhibitions because she has a great passion for art. 杰西卡参加过很多艺术展览，因为她对艺术很有热情。另外 passion 也有愤怒的意思，所以 fly into a passion 就是指 become very angry 勃然大怒的意思，相当于 fly into a rage或 fly into a fury. Rage, R-A-G-E, Fury, F-U-R-Y. 这两个名词都有愤怒的意思。例如 Tom flew into a fury when he overheard his best friend speaking ill of him. 当汤姆无意间听到他最好的朋友说他坏话时，他勃然大怒。文章的第一段描述一名叫做 Lockwood 的男子在 Thrush Cross Grange 租屋，察觉到这个地方有些不对劲，因此问了管家关于这个房子和房子主人的事情。我们看到这一段第3句的后半部分 Lockwood can sense something off about the property's owner and his landlord, Heathcliff. 洛克伍德能感觉到啸风山庄这房产的所有人，亦是他房东的希斯克里夫不太寻常。名词 property 在本句是房地产的意思。例如 Because of an economic depression, property prices in our country are falling. 因为经济萧条，我国的房地产价格正在下跌。Property 还有财产、所有物的意思。例如 personal property就是指个人资产。Intellectual property rights 就是指智慧财产权。Intellectual, I-N-T-E-L-L-E-C-T-U-A-L。 另外 property 也有特性、特质的意思。例如 healing property 就是指疗效。Medicinal property 就是指药效。Medicinal, M-E-D-I-C-I-N-A-L。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue with our lesson. Now, remember, Lockwood wants to know all the scuttlebutt, all the rumors about Heathcliff and the different estates that he owns. So Nellie, Dean, the housekeeper, starts to tell him. So here's her story. Nellie's story begins roughly 3 decades earlier, going back 30 years, but roughly, more or less, give or take a couple of years. Maybe 32 years ago, maybe 28 years ago, just roughly 3 decades earlier. And that's when Mr. Earnshaw, the owner of Wuthering Heights, brings home an orphan Heathcliff to raise as his own. So we've got Mr. Earnshaw. We don't really need to know too much about him, but Heathcliff is the person we need to focus on. He's an orphan at this time, which means he's lost his parents and goes to live with somebody else.
That's right. So he brings little Heathcliff home to give him a home, but unfortunately he's still treated like sort of a servant there in the home. He isn't treated like he's a real son. And so Heathcliff kind of grows up resenting everything. He doesn't have the fine manners that everybody else does. So Earnshaw has a daughter. So Earnshaw, the guy who brought Heathcliff home, has his own daughter whose name is Catherine. She's beautiful, and she soon grows to love Heathcliff. Heathcliff is kind of handsome, kind of sexy, but he doesn't have the social status that Catherine has, or some of the people who live in that area, like Edgar. We're going to talk about him. So she grows to love Heathcliff, and it says here, Heathcliff reciprocates her feelings. If you reciprocate something, guys, you give back or do something to someone that you got instead. For example, maybe my best friend goes, hey, let's go eat dinner. I'll pay for your dinner. And the next week I go, okay, I'm going to reciprocate. This time I'm going to pay for dinner for you. So kind of trade off that way. So they both have feelings for each other. And Catherine has a brother named Hindley, but Hindley really detests Heathcliff. He kind of resents him. Heathcliff doesn't treat little Hindley better or very well either, because Hindley is going to inherit, what his dad has, Mr. Earnshaw, when he dies. And so, Heathcliff kind of feels like the poor relative living at home. Now, to curb or maybe stop or contain Hindley's cruelty toward Heathcliff, Earnshaw sends his son away to college. Notice here he doesn't send Heathcliff away to college. No, he's not going to pay for Heathcliff's education, but his son, his true son, not someone he adopted, Hindley, goes away to school because Heathcliff and Hindley kind of fight and can't get along that way.
Exactly. So he's curbing the cruelty. He's kind of cutting back on that. Maybe you've been smoking too much recently, so you need to curb your smoking or curb your drinking. So he wants to reduce Hindley's cruelty. He sends Hindley off to college. I think Hindley probably wouldn't like that. Off to college, maybe some boarding school, university. And then, unfortunately, Earnshaw dies. So when Earnshaw dies, Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights and returns with Frances, his wife. So, yes, Hindley's been out there. He's gone to college. He's probably graduated. He met the girl of his dreams. They got married. He's got a great job or something like that and has a lot of money. So, hey, Earnshaw's dead, so Hindley comes back. I'm the son, after all, so it's going to be my estate. So he comes back and he inherits it, which means you get something after someone dies. You can inherit a lot of money, for example, if your parents die and they're really rich or something like that. So, yes, Hindley inherits Wuthering Heights and returns with his wife, Frances. And shortly after, Frances dies, giving birth to their son, Hareton. That doesn't sound very nice. People are dying left and right in this novel here, but I guess back at that period of history, it was very common for people to die. They didn't have cures for diseases and stuff like that. Yeah. So I guess nowadays, if someone was giving birth, they probably have a pretty high survival rate, but back then, hey, Frances unfortunately died giving birth to their son, Hareton. Does that mean Hareton was still born?
Oh, yeah, Hareton's around. Yeah, we're going to hear about Hareton. Now, meanwhile, Catherine, remember, who kind of was attracted to Heathcliff, although Heathcliff had no social standing, she thinks, I want to marry someone who has more power and money. Even though I love Heathcliff, I want to be important. And so back then, especially women, in order to have some wealth and importance, they had to marry someone. They couldn't have it on their own. So she was in pursuit of social advancement. She wanted to be socially in a different social class. So if you're in pursuit of something, you're chasing it, you want it. You could be pursuing a new career. You could be pursuing a guy or a girl that you are attracted to. She was pursuing social advancement. She wanted to be important socially. And so rather than go with Heathcliff, who she really does kind of love, she picks Edgar Linton, who has money, and she becomes engaged to him. And they reside, or they live at Thrushcross Grange, despite her desire for Heathcliff. You can imagine how this affects Heathcliff now, right? The girl he loves chooses someone who has money and power instead. So he's distraught. If you're distraught, you're so upset, you don't know what to do. He leaves Wuthering Heights for 3 years after Catherine is married. He can't stand to see Catherine with Edgar. And during this time, Catherine dies giving birth. Hey, having a baby back then was dangerous stuff, guys. There was no hospital to help you out. So she died after giving birth to a girl who is also named Catherine because she's named after her mother.
This kind of gets confusing because now we've got two Catherines, the mother and the daughter.
Right.
The mother's now dead. And when Heathcliff returns, he's intent on seeking revenge on those who've wronged him. So he doesn't like Hindley, and I guess maybe he doesn't like Catherine anymore because she kind of jilted him. She dumped him for a rich guy.
She's dead at this point, right?
But she's dead anyway, so I guess he can't really have any revenge on her. But he's intent on seeking revenge. If you're intent on something, that means you really want to do that thing. You're kind of obsessed with that. Revenge is getting someone back. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Right. Well, Edgar, who is married to his Heathcliff's love, Catherine, is still there, right? So when he comes back, he wants revenge. Hindley, the son of Mr. Earnshaw, who adopted Heathcliff, he becomes an alcoholic. So he dies soon after Heathcliff's return. Lots of death in this book. Tom's right. Upon inheriting Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff inherits because Hindley, the son of Mr. Earnshaw, is gone. So it goes to an adopted son, Heathcliff. He ends up marrying Isabella Linton, Edgar's sister. Remember, he hated Edgar because he married Catherine, who he loved, but he ends up marrying Isabella. But what's sad is he treats Isabella horribly. Here it says cruelly. He tries to intentionally make her sad and cry. And so she takes off to London. She doesn't want to be with Heathcliff. And she gives birth to a son named Linton, who is Heathcliff's son with Isabella.
Well, it's getting confusing with all these names, but let's just keep going here. Now, 13 years go by, during which Nellie takes care of the young Catherine. So there's the housekeeper, Nellie, and she takes care of the young Catherine. And when Isabella dies, Linton moves to Wuthering Heights. Linton now is the son of Isabella.
Heathcliff and Isabella, right.
Okay. I got that so far. So, in any case, he moves to Wuthering Heights, and then Heathcliff is ever resentful. He just can't let this go.
He's an angry man.
He's seeking revenge. He's going to be doing this. He's ever resentful, which means he's always resentful. If you resent someone, that means you really don't like something they did to you. He forces Catherine and Linton into marriage. You guys are going to get married. You have no choice. And thus, therefore, when Edgar and Linton, who are both sickly, die, Heathcliff becomes the owner of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. So I guess he got his revenge. Everybody's died now, and he owns both of those estates. And he then forces Catherine to act as the housekeeper at Wuthering Heights. So he's really punishing Catherine now. She's got to be a housekeeper now. Wow, that's a really low blow.
Yeah, so back then, of course. So shocked at Nellie's story, Lockwood, remember, he is the guy who's kind of telling the story. He's rented Thrushcross Grange. He leaves the manor, and when he returns 6 months later, Nellie informs him of Heathcliff's death and young Catherine's engagement engagement to Hareton. So young Catherine, who had been forced to become a housekeeper, actually ends up getting engaged to Hareton, who is the son of Hindley and Francis, if you can keep all of these different names straight. It's a great story, and there's a lot to get out of it. Just having this unit has made me want to go back and reread it, which I'm going to.
Okay, and they all lived happily ever after.
Oh, we should talk about this word inform. If you inform someone of something, you're just giving them some information. I think we overuse inform in Taiwan instead of just letting someone know. I've had to teach classes on writing, emails, and stuff, and I know in business they often will use, I'm writing to inform you. Be careful with that. Sometimes you just need a more casual, I'm writing to let you know something's happening.
Inform you sounds more serious, like I'm informing you that you're fired or something.
Or yeah,
like
I'm informing that, your son was killed in duty in a war. So be careful with that. Sometimes you just want to use a more casual phrase like letting someone know of something. Right now, guys, it's time one more time for our Chinese teacher.
文章的第二段提到 Wuthering Heights 本来的主人 Mr. Earnshaw 收养了一名孤儿 Heathcliff。Mr. Earnshaw 的女儿 Catherine 爱上了 Heathcliff， 但他的儿子 Hindley 却痛恨 Heathcliff。我们看到第二段的第四句 To curb Hindley's cruelty toward Heathcliff, Earnshaw sends his son away to college. 为了抑制辛德里对希斯克里夫的残酷，恩肖把他的儿子送去读大学。动词 curb 有控制、抑制、约束的意思。例如 The government is taking measures to curb the spread of the virus. 政府正在采取措施来抑制病毒的扩散。If you want to make friends with others, you'd better curb your temper. 如果你想和别人交朋友，你最好克制你的脾气。文章的第3、4段提到Catherine 最后为了社会地位而嫁给了别人。Heathcliff 因而离开 Wuthering Heights。3年后，他重返 Wuthering Heights， 开始对那些对不起他的人进行报复。我们看到第4段的 Upon inheriting Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff marries Isabella Linton, Edgar's sister. 一继承啸风山庄后，希斯克里夫就娶了艾德格·林顿的妹妹伊莎贝拉。Upon 或 on 加名词或 VING 逗号再接一完整句子，用来表示一怎么样就怎么样的意思，相当于 as soon as S 加 V 逗号 S 加 V。 使用此句型要小心 upon 所指涉的主词必须要和子句的主词是同一人。例如 As soon as Kevin saw his girlfriend at the airport, he gave her a big hug. 凯文在机场一看到他的女朋友，就给她一个大大的拥抱。As soon as 子句的主词和主要子句的主词都是 Kevin， 所以这一句又可以改成 Upon seeing his girlfriend at the airport, Kevin gave her a big hug. 我们最后看到倒数第2段的第一句 13 years go by, during which Nellie takes care of the young Catherine. 13年过去了，在这段期间，奈莉照顾小凯瑟琳。这句的 which 是关系代名词，代替前面提过的13 years。要注意的是，此处的 which 不可以用13 years 代替，这样前后2个完整句子只用逗号连接，却没有连接词，因此要用 which， 同时具有连接词的功用。以上就是今天的课程，谢谢收听。
Hey, that's it for today's lesson, but hey, join us again next time. We're going to talk about some of the facts and the life and times of the author of this novel, Emily Bronte. I'm looking forward to that, so everybody please join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
See you later.